Nation, we got a very special guest slash podcast. This is an appetizer for we're gonna do another podcast Thursday. Maybe we'll even go live for that one. Nikita, how do you feel about that?
I feel great about that.
Okay, we'll go live for that one. We're gonna talk about Creo Partners Program, which is something brand new that Creo just rolled out. Nikita's relatively new with Creo, but she's not new to the industry. She's been a coordinator. She's actually the ideal, like you're the archetype Creo employee, I think. You're a coordinator that used Creo, right? Is this correct?
Yes,
Then now,
very, very true.
so how did this all happen? Like, how do you go from being a coordinator that uses Creo to, hey, I can actually work here? Because a lot of the coordinators, and if you're my coordinator listening, close your ears
I
right
know.
now.
It's like
Creo
I
does
don't even
not
want
want
to
you there.
publicize this.
Creo doesn't want you there, guys. Back to work. But no, seriously, how did you do that, Nikita?
So I started my clinical research site career at Affinity Health Site Network. So I started as a patient recruiter after COVID, as many, people would maybe also say that I discovered the clinical research industry. I always had a clinical background. So I didn't even know until after COVID that the clinical research industry and careers within existed. So I started at Affinity Health as a patient recruiter, and we were using Clinical Conductor actually at as before we started Creo. So, but all
Mhm.
of our source is on paper at this point. So then I moved my way up to a CRC and CTA first, then CRC, all paper. So when I became a CRC, our site transitioned from paper to Creo eSource and used Creo CTMS, Creo's recruitment module. So as I just gained more leadership and education within the clinical research industry, I then moved to being a business development associate, learning about the industry in general, sponsors, biotechs, especially what our site network's patient population looked like, what studies to target, how the preferred site game works, and then I moved up to being business development manager at the site network. So
Wow.
and also managing recruitment because both, that was kind of a new thing to me because I walked in thinking, I'm a business development manager, but it totally goes hand in hand with patient recruitment. Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so with that, I came those, that was prior to Creo, my latest responsibilities. And our site network was acquired by AMR. And so I was looking, of course, for a new job. And so I found Creo just not only being a former super user of Creo, but I saw that this role was open of being Creo community manager. And I was like, this is perfect because I needed something to kind of bridge. I'd like to bridge the gap between, technology and sites. Sometimes it's a very hard thing for sites to swallow technology, I think. So I hope, I'm lucky to have this role as Creo community manager and wanting to bridge that gap. And also Creo being a site powered technology, I'm happy to, move it forward and advance it to make sure that sites are getting what they need and to support sites essentially
That's
business
amazing.
development
That's
and
an
growth.
awesome story because like
Yeah.
in the past, before these tech vendors really got big and ubiquitous, more or less. I mean, everyone knows I'm a fan of Creo, but there's other tech vendors besides Creo. Like coordinators, the only option you had really was if you didn't want to do coordinating anymore at a site, was either start your own site or work for a CRO or a sponsor. And
Yeah,
today you have a whole nother avenue, which
absolutely.
arguably is the biggest avenue of all, um, tech vendors. I mean, they're taking up a bunch of the market share. The R&D spend, a lot of it's going to tech vendors, and you guys wasn't Creo just hiring recently?
Yeah.
You guys were
Yes.
hiring when everyone else is like freezing jobs, and you and the other successful tech vendors are hiring. So that
Yes.
says a lot.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a great place to work too. But this, the Creo community manager, this is, a role where I'm happy to have had that site experience and also be able to bring that into this role. And with the start of the partners program, which we just launched, and which we'll be talking about soon coming up, I can leverage, my site experience and ensure that sites are able to leverage this, partner directory and partners program to be successful.
So straight out of college, Loyola University Chicago, bachelor's
Yes.
in biology.
Yep.
You worked for a year in marketing
Yeah.
for like digital media, right?
Yes.
Nothing to do really with research.
Um,
And
None.
then got a job with Loyola again as a research associate, so you got back into research. And then
Yes.
as a CRA, uh, clinical research associate with a VA hospital where you did an
Yeah.
internship, and then
Yeah.
coordinator looks like right after that with this site network. Well, recruitment specialist first and then
Yeah.
coordinator.
Yeah. Exactly.
So patient, you do seem to have the personality of recruiter, biz dev, and then the coordinating, it's important that you did that. How did you like coordinating compared to biz dev and recruitment? Like, can you compare what you
Yes.
like, compare contrast maybe?
I, for someone who is really interested in all things clinical and also someone who likes to be facing, I think patient facing as a clinical research coordinator was really exciting, different, right, than a biz dev role. But it really helped me learn what, the ins and outs of the entire workflow for, to run a clinical research trial at a site network is like. And I think you cannot, there's so many, pieces and portions that I took from that role into a biz dev role, in terms of study startup, right? That's part of biz dev that, things, you need to take into account. Also, one of the greatest ins for business development for trial acquisition would be through a CRA. You kind of have to know those relationships. So I think
Mhm.
there's a lot, that I took from that role into the biz dev role.
Yeah, career trajectory like the modern, 2020 and beyond version of
Yeah.
a career trajectory because like I said, back in the day it was CRC, CRA, go on to work for a sponsor and then you retire. Like that's your career.
Yep.
And
Yep.
today everything's like shorter stints at places. Hopefully you like Creo and you stay long. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity within Creo to grow, but for other coordinators watching, like your options, you have options. You have probably more options than you think. This is why it's important to come to places like Save Our Sites conference. You like how I did that, Nikita? Seamless transition to a call to
Amazing.
action. SaveOurSites.com, guys. I know you got to go soon, but do you have any advice for coordinators? We're gonna give like a sneak peek to the Creo Partners program. But when you were at the site, let's talk a little bit about the biz dev, okay? Because when I hear that, I think, okay, that's for sites to get studies.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like at your site network, it was a lot more than that because you were
Yeah.
saying it's related to recruitment. I'm
Yeah.
imagining physician outreach. I'm
Absolutely.
imagining
Huge
selecting
part of
vendors for the
it. Huge
site.
part of it. Yes, all of that. 100%.
So walk me through some of like your trouble spots there.
Mm-hmm.
And then this will be like a good teaser for basically the part two that we're gonna do, possibly live, guys. And everybody go connect with Nikita as soon as you watch or listen to this. Her LinkedIn, which we're not even connected, by the way, Nikita, is underneath this video slash show notes. We're connected now.
Yes, we absolutely are. But in terms of, I guess, the pain points, so recruitment wise, you have to know your patient population, right? And you need to be able to, I was using Creo as our site network was as a patient database, right? To be able to have a community of patients to re-engage, right? Because those are going to be, your frequent flyers perhaps in clinical research trials, right? And it's a hard, again, clinical trials, they're a hard pill to swallow, I think, for anyone who isn't accustomed to hearing about them. So to have the advocates and allies within is very helpful. And we also want to thank that community as well. So using Creo as a patient database itself, but you still have other places that where these patients are coming from, right? And then pulling in. I was also doing community engagement. So there's different sources, right? So ensuring that, the patient data within the recruitment funnel, it all is seamlessly going in a way that, can be streamlined all the way up to screening and throughout. I was able to work with my CSM, who's also Stacy at the time, to really streamline that process. So that was certainly a pain point. But once I realized that within the career recruitment module, you can sync traits and do things to streamline the process. It was quite easy to determine the origin of each patient, whether it was a physician's EMR, whether it was a sign-up list at a community event, any of those things. So identifying, the source and also different campaigns, the success of them, right? You have to kind of realize, okay, one of them was from a lead gen vendor. How successful was this? Am I going to work with them
But
again?
what kind of studies were you guys doing at that time?
Vaccine trials, we were
Okay.
really all across the board, metabolic, oncology, pretty much all gen med studies.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
And
And
then what
also,
about like selecting vendors? I mean, how much autonomy were you given in your role?
so it was me and it was me and a team of recruitment personnel. So all voices certainly would be heard, but it was all of us who would, our structure was each campaign, someone would be in charge of. So given that, it would be on each person to kind of review how successful was this campaign, how many leads do we get out of them, how much, how many screening visits. So take that collectively and then decide who, what vendors we're going to work with again. Sometimes it was out of ease because we had already been working with those vendors, right? But it's hard when you're kind of in a time crunch. Maybe you need to generate leads and you're just like, oh, I'll just work with the same, one again, or I just don't have the time to go finding a new recruitment vendor,
Yeah.
things like that. So,
We got a no nonsense patient ace. Stay tuned, guys. We're gonna tell you more about it. Nikita, I'm gonna ask you a tough question, and I want
mhm.
you to give an honest answer. For the sites watching, but by this point, there are only sites left maybe watching. Um, what did that company do right, and what did they not do, or what could they have done better as far as biz dev is concerned,
Mhm.
from your experiences?
I
Everyone
would,
can do better, so just this
yeah.
is good for everyone to learn.
Yeah. It's a hard business development is hard because you're always trying to do what's financially viable, right? But it's also hard when you don't have the metrics and statistics to back that decision.
Yeah,
So I
it's just
think that
subjective,
yes,
anecdotal. Well, it
yes,
seems like it's working. Let's pay Nikita a
uh-huh,
little more.
right.
Did they pay you more?
Yes.
They get okay. So they put incentive. Did they give you like incentives tied to your performance, or was it just like salary and
No,
just
just salary.
okay?
Yeah, just salary. But
Do you think it
that's
would have been better for you if they did tie in incentives, or not
not
really?
No, not for
Okay,
me. I mean, if you're truly passionate, which I know that seems cliche, but I really am. I think that more conducive actually to be able that would empower me then to be like, maybe we need to reinvent the wheel here,
I
right?
see.
Without having to worry about, oh, am I going to get an incentive for
Yeah, I ask
this?
as a site owner selfishly,
Yeah,
trying
sure.
to keep my staff and
Yeah, I
um
think it depends. I think it depends on the person's motivation, honestly. And also,
okay.
if you want them to be truly and wholeheartedly invested in the process and if you want them to say, hey, we do need to reinvent the wheel here, let's get, we need to have metrics here to drive, our forecasting and how we're going to go about the entire biz dev process. I think in that sense, I was more empowered at, the salary.
I think a lot of sites need to learn from each other. That's why we do save our sites again.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for the merger and acquisition that you guys were a part of, that sounds like you were let go. Do you think you would have stayed on? Like, as much as you love Creo, do you think you would have just stayed on?
I think that I also began to have a lot of knowledge as well, just by being in that role. And it kind of depends, honestly, on the career outlook, right? I definitely could be, in higher leadership, at the site network, or I
Uh,
could have taken, a different turn and maybe, Creo was it. I always had Creo in the back of my mind because I really loved using their product and saw, with my own eyes what the transition from paper to Creo eSource looked like and what the outcomes of that were on, the our operations and just streamlining and making them just, it really truly changed our site operations, honestly. So Creo was always in the back of our mind, in
so
my mind.
it sounded like whether the M&A or not, and correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong, you were compensated fairly. You didn't mind working there, but you're always tinkering, exploring, looking for
Yeah.
what's new. And that's just the kind of personality you are, and there's really not much that site could have done to keep you from exploring other opportunities outside of that site.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Okay.
I think that's always understood though. I have to say that I don't think you can ever think that, you know, that any of your staff or employees are looking at other options at any time, for
Yeah,
their own
they I
growth.
think they always are. I think everyone's motive driven by something different or a
Yeah.
combination, right? And
Yeah.
there's personality types like you that are looking to see
Mhm.
what's new, like you know, the latest kind of tech, and there's others that just want stable salary and
Mhm.
flexibility of work
Sure.
schedule and all that stuff. So everyone's different, but I
Yeah.
always, whenever I get someone who left the site to go somewhere
Yeah,
else,
sure.
I try to
That's a
find out why.
yeah, fair question.
Well, thank you, Nikita. Everyone, go connect with her right now. Her
Please do.
LinkedIn is underneath. I just connected with her as well, and she's gonna
Even though I've been a
be.
huge fan, don't get me wrong. I have been a very huge fan. I don't know why we were not connected.
We met at
Uh,
ACRP this last year in
yeah,
Anaheim. You didn't make it to the dinner because your flight was delayed, but you invited me to the dinner. So thanks to you, I was invited to the Creo dinner, got to meet the team. You're
yeah.
part of a really cool team too. And I
I
told
love
them that to their face. Like, I think that's one of the only organizations that I would actually be employable at if vlogging ended and my sites ended for some reason. I think Creo is like a safe
well
backup for
shortlist,
me.
yeah. We'll shortlist. Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
make
well,
sure.
thank you so much, Nikita. I really appreciate it. If you're a
Oh,
coordinator or a site and you want to learn more about Nikita's career path or maybe what she's up to at Creo, go connect with her right now. Stay tuned to our live stream later on this week on Thursday, which this will be uploaded tomorrow, so you'll see it the next day, right? Thank you, Nikita.
thank you.
Like, subscribe, comment, share. Bye bye.